What's telling me I can add moderators? That's a good sign, right? You guys need to help me get up to 1,000 followers on the Neogenian Whisper, so that unlocks these live things 100%. I haven't had any other reason to ask lately, but I promise I'll start making nifty content again too. Need a link to the stream? How do I drop you a link to the stream? Or how can someone drop you a link to the stream? See, I'm not a live streaming pro, not a live streaming vet, so I don't know. I can copy a link there. I'm gonna try. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. Need to put my phone in a good spot so that people can see me through two different cameras. And maybe somebody in the chat can let us know if that's a working while I sip some tea. Mark says, make sure that you click the link so that it opens in the YouTube app and not the Discord app. Exactly. Since the Discord is the nest of certain technical problems. Thinking with it on YouTube, maybe Laura, for instance, could even push it up to her television if desired. Things like that can work a little better. And then you can get that volume level cranked up so that it's a listenable class. You can see how well or poorly I've shaved my cheeks lately and, you know, awful things like that. Oh yeah, one or the other, as Morg is saying. There's really no need to connect both places. Just find one that works for you. The best experience is integrating it all together, but if you need to have it on YouTube on your television or phone to hear it and use the Discord chat from a different device, you know, you can hybridize these things together without trying to watch me in two places. "7:35 Eastern. I'm going to try to get started reading without hopefully blocking myself from your view there. What do you think about my shirt? Oh, shit, I need to put myself up on Discord. Like, open the camera. There we are. Just my head. Just my head. You should really go look at me on YouTube. You can see my shirt. It's kind of fun. I'm going to stand up just a little bit. See what it says? I rolled a 1 on 20-sided die. So crap, you know, that's a botch. That's so my enemies roll a 1 when they see it, right? It's totem. If I have those, they can always roll a 1. Try to hit me with something and slip on a banana peel. Basically, that's a 1. But you gaming nerds know that. Yeah, or just chat in YouTube. As Elise is doing, shirt is the Will Wheaton curse. Yes! Is that something that came out on Big Bang Theory during his many guest appearances where he played himself, or is that something that lives only on the internet, the Will Wheaton curse? Maybe it's both. How do you mute Discord without leaving it? I'm not even sure. I bet there's a way. Ask an AI. Ask a chatbot when you're in a pinch. I've got like 9 things going on here. ChatGPT-5, I'm told, knows everything. And Grok knows more. One of them is probably God by now. I like Perplexity myself. It gives you sourced answers. will we can curse. Dun dun dun. I'm going to try to read without blocking my face over here. I think we finished off on, excuse me, page 151. Does that sound right? Last week, Susan or Philip, was it? One or the other was, I think it was Philip last week, wasn't it? Did we hit page 151? Does that sound right? Cosmogenesis, am I holding the right book? Section 7. Should I be reading from the top of section 7? Where that B in my paperback is 155. All right. From Cosmogenesis. Oh, look there, like YouTube. New people, weird people who just stumbled into this thing and don't know what the hell's going on. Cosmogenesis by Morg. Order it from Amazon today. The rise of all awareness and hyper-awareness. While materialism is by no means dead, materialists are increasingly forced to acknowledge the limitations of their beliefs. Some are even leaving behind materialism entirely for other systems, such as panpsychism. What a weird thing for that to take off, right? It's a step in the right direction, although still remains, it retains an aspect of naturalism. This is the current stage of the dialectic we are in now in the mainstream scientific community and pop science aficionados. It's the end of the dominance of the senses, at least for some, as humanity moves into the third stage of intuition. Even as humanity enters this third stage, the seeds of the fourth have already begun to grow. The third stage of intuition in the dialectical evolution of consciousness is marked by a shift towards all awareness. In this stage, humanity is beginning to leave behind the nihilism brought about by scientific materialism and empiricism. People are reconnecting to the domain of the unconscious, realizing they are eternal and understanding that there is more to existence than mere matter. However, unlike the first stage, they are guided purely by emotions. Many are at this point. And they also retain what they've learned from the second stage. So it can get to be a bit of a mishmash, right? This results in being less dogmatic, at least, than old religions. They apply some amount of critical thinking, though they aren't guided by reason, and are often, but not always, open to unity, rather than the intense hatred of the other that is characteristic of many of the old religions, which led to so much bloodshed during holy wars, crusades, and the purging of heretics and infidels, some of my favorite people. This stage leads humanity to the growing recognition of reality as an interconnected unity, a collective entity rather than as fundamentally separate. In this stage, development of all awareness leads to the understanding that all beings and phenomena are intrinsically connected. It moves beyond the individualistic and often isolated perspective that dominated previous stages. This awareness recognizes that every action, thought, and event is part of a larger, interconnected existence. The illusion of separation, which was a cornerstone of earlier stages of development, begins to dissolve. The rise of all awareness also brings about a shift in how individuals perceive and interact with the world. There's a growing recognition that our actions have far-reaching consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the collective and the planet as a whole. This can lead to a more responsible and holistic approach to living, where the well-being of the collective becomes a key consideration in decision making. Advancements in technology and communication also play a crucial role in this growing sense of interconnectedness and the development of all awareness. Imagine, if you will, personal aside, imagine that we took the customary hierarchy where economics are at the top and, wage slavery is just fine. Human needs are secondary at best, and thoughts about ecosystem, ecology, sustainability, environment are third tier at best. Imagine we took that and just reversed it, right? What if sustainability had to be at the top and human needs had to be second only to sustainability, ecological viability, well, the life of the planet itself, right? And what if economic thinking had to come third? That's the reversal that we need. From self-awareness to all awareness. As we've seen, the concept of self-awareness is associated with the development of the analog I, an internal model that represents oneself. This model is crucial for navigating the world, making decisions, and for understanding oneself as a distinct entity. However, as consciousness evolves into the stage of all awareness, a new structure emerges within the psyche, the analog all. The analog all is an internal representation of a holistic, interconnected reality that transcends the individual focused analog I. While the analog I is primarily concerned with the self, and often views others as separate or even potential threats, the analog all perceives others as integral parts of an interconnected whole. So holistic awareness, all awareness, sees the other not as fundamentally distinct entity to compete against, but as a reflection or an aspect of the absolute, all reality, creating a sense of unity and connectedness with the world. That's your other self trying to evolve, right? Your neighbor that, just keeps running over the rose bushes with the lawnmower, or the tyrant who leads a tin-pot dictatorship somewhere. Time to evolve, other selves. In the stage of all awareness, the analog all transforms how individuals perceive their relationship with the universe and each other. This change is deeply psychological, affecting one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. The development of the analog all is critical to hyperawareness, which will be discussed in greater detail in psychogenesis. In hyperawareness, the development and integration of the analog all becomes central to achieving a true understanding of reality. Challenges and pitfalls of the intuitive stage we're in. In paperback, this is page 157 toward the bottom. The problem with this third stage is that it's led by intuition, not reason or critical thinking. Since intuition takes command rather than senses or pure emotion, the positive results are an openness to unity and a realization that reality is non-physical. But because intuition is given priority over reason, the negative results are that these intuitions are highly chaotic, disorganized, and often in the form of archetypal symbolism, since intuition taps into the nonlinear, holistic domain of mind and tumultuous unconscious. This leads to an extremely distorted understanding of existence and quickly results in insane beliefs. No foundation in rationality, such as meaningless ideas like quantum timeline hopping and the belief in wild conspiracy theories, or that by putting fancy enough language on something, you've thereby understood it. They also tend to have a hatred towards reason, preferring the emotional experience that accompanies their intuitions It results in relativism, where everyone has their own truth, rendering the idea of truth meaningless. You paint yourself into a corner pretty quickly, solipsism that way. The idea that all truths are valid may be seen as positive or harmless at first, but after some consideration, it will be recognized that logically this includes even those ideas that are intolerant, racist, sexist, homophobic, etc., the acceptance of which Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance shows leads to the breeding of more hate and a society that's incompatible with the converse values that you actually hold. There is much more that could be said, but for the sake of time, it's enough to know that this third stage may rescue humanity from nihilism, from the big nothing, but it leads to irrationality, since it's guided by intuition rather than reason. This means individuals often gather information from mystical experiences without the guidance of reason to understand those experiences. The nonlinear domain of mind and the chaotic unconscious, while powerful and critical to understanding existence, is filled with archetypal symbolism that can be mistaken for truth rather than understood as representations of a deeper nature. Even as humanity enters the third stage of intuition, the seeds of the fourth stage of reason and hyper-awareness have already been planted and have begun to sprout. Everything good? What's going on here? I'm going to look at the chats for a second. Nihilism and nihilism are both perfectly good pronunciations. I say to you, it's a matter of preference. Nihil is the old word for nothing. Yep, exactly. How's it going for Laura? Now I'm looking at the other chat. Laura, Flower Dragon, are you hearing me? Did the putting me on YouTube work for you at all? Okay, it works here. Good enough. Didn't want to leave anybody frustrated tonight. We're at the rise of hyper-awareness. In Neogenesis, we learned that hyper-awareness is a highly developed form of all awareness. Thus, the development of the analog all is a necessary precondition for hyper-awareness. However, to become hyper-aware, it must be developed to a specific degree. There were certainly individuals who developed an analog all, but were not hyper-aware down through history, such as select leaders in Western and Eastern esoteric schools of thought and the occult tradition, as well as some religions and, spiritual leaders. The development of the analog all in individuals was extremely rare, but existent. However, today, the development of the analog all in its nascent stage is rapidly becoming more widespread, thanks to elements responsible for humanity's entrance into the intuitive stage. For the most part, this development of the analog all has been intuitively developed only. Hyper-awareness requires the intuitive, rational, and experiential development of the analog all, so that it lives for the neocortex, the limbic system, and the senses, right? Bringing in the world. The fourth stage of reason and the rise of hyper-awareness leads to a deep understanding of consciousness and existence, where reality is understood as an evolving entity, coming to self-awareness through and as us. You're the divinity that wakes up, the divinity that wakes up in a moment of self-recognition, right? Let's look at some of the thinkers that set the stage for hyper-awareness. Spinoza, of course, leading this section, Spinoza's pantheism and the unity of existence. Baruch Spinoza, a 17th century philosopher, proposed a pantheistic view of the universe where God and nature are seen as two names for the same reality. Spinoza wanted to create a rational religion, and his philosophy posits that by understanding nature, we understand God, and thus we understand ourselves as part of this unified reality. For Spinoza, everything that is in God, and nothing can be or be conceived of without God. Spinoza's rational method to understanding this unity implies that by comprehending nature, we gain insights into the divine and thus into ourselves as integral aspects of this unity. This recognition of interconnectedness is a step toward realizing a self-aware universe. Pretty sure he got excommunicated from his Jewish community for his writings. But that was, 350 years ago or something. Let's see. Schelling's philosophy of nature. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling's philosophy of nature posited that the rational world and human consciousness are parallel manifestations of the absolute. Mind blown. Nature is seen as a visible spirit or mind, and spirit as the invisible aspect of nature. In his view, the development of the natural world and the development of human consciousness are parallel processes, or processes, Nelson, if you prefer, of a single evolving reality. Schelling's system attempts to bridge the divide between nature and spirit. For Schelling, the evolution of the cosmos and the development of human consciousness are intertwined processes. In this view, as nature evolves, it becomes increasingly capable of consciousness. And as human consciousness evolves, it gains a deeper understanding of nature. This mutual evolution is the process through which the universe attains self-realization. Hegel's absolute idealism. Hey, Ryan. Glad you could join us. We're on page 160 in paperback, Cosmogenesis. Hegel's absolute idealism. In the 19th century, a Zeta whose avataric expression we call Hegel rationally realized in a comprehensive and systematic way that existence is a mind coming to self-consciousness through the world it generated from itself, and he wrote about it so tortuously that most people can't read him, but we know that we love Hegel. As Hegel realized this and understood that he was part of this mind, reality took an important step forward in its own rational self-consciousness. This was a monumental moment. The billions of years of biological evolution on Earth, as well as the subsequent evolution of thought. Don't feel bad about it if you haven't read all of Hegel. Maybe you haven't read all of Joyce for, somewhat similar reasons. It was a monumental moment. The billions of years of biological evolution on Earth, as well as the subsequent evolution of thought, all culminated in the rational realization of a single mind that it was reality awakening to itself. Hegel was a pivotal figure in setting the stage for the development of hyperawareness. Imagine the isolation he must have experienced. Having understood this truth, Hegel's last words are said to have been, "Only one man ever understood me, and even he did not understand me." Who was he talking about right there? Morg Schopenhauer? His fellow faculty in the same philosophy department? Goddamn, they hated each other. I think Schopenhauer hated Hegel because Hegel was really popular and got all the students. And Schopenhauer, who was a genius in his own right, but a little sour, a little bitter, was teaching 5 people instead of a packed lecture hall. Anyway, I digress. Hegel presented a comprehensive system that explores the evolution of mind in all existence. His absolute idealism posits that reality is fundamentally rational and that the physical world is a manifestation of an underlying metaphysical reality. He proposed that history is a dialectical process where each stage of development in nature and human society represents the unfolding of absolute spirit or consciousness. This unfolding is the process of reality becoming increasingly self-aware. For Hegel, the absolute or the ultimate reality is not static but dynamic, constantly evolving and coming to know itself through its manifestations, including human history and culture, right? The dialectical process is the mechanism through which mind evolves. Each stage of this process is a step towards a fuller realization of the absolute, where the final stage represents the self-awareness of the universe itself. Hegel said, God is God only so far as he knows himself. His self-knowledge is further a self-consciousness in man and man's knowledge of God, which proceeds to man's self-knowledge in God. See, that's just a little bit of Hegel, and it's translated into English, and it's still hard. Hegel's philosophy is one of the greatest attempts to present, in a rationally systematized way, the concept of reality, or the absolute, as a dynamic, self-developing process that becomes increasingly conscious of itself. While there were other philosophers and thinkers both in the Western tradition and in other cultures who contemplated the self-reflective nature of reality or the universe, Hegel's system is incredibly complex in its depth, rigor, and systematic nature. His work is a milestone in the intellectual history of humanity, where the idea of the universe becoming conscious of itself is articulated with unprecedented clarity and sophistication. Hegel rationally comprehended that reality is a developing, dialectically evolving mind coming to know itself through itself by unconsciously generating the world from itself. Through Hegel, reality, the absolute, rationally and explicitly became conscious of itself. Hegel was a mode of existence, an avataric expression of a node of the network mind associated with Earth that realized it is, and we are, reality. It's important to know that Hegel's philosophy is one expression of this idea, and that similar concepts can be found, albeit expressed differently, in various philosophical and spiritual traditions across the world, especially in the East. The uniqueness of Hegel's contribution lies in the particular way he rationalized and systematized these ideas. Yeah, Rin, that would be a good way to learn Hegel. I would think that some fluency in German would help. Some access to source materials that are not in translation would probably help. J.P. Brooks, I agree with Morg and Hegel about the dynamic rather than static nature of ultimate reality. Right, God is not a finished product. It's a process of becoming, and without awareness, it can get kind of ugly on itself, as history bears witness. Like, why would we go through slavery and crusades and persecution and societies built viciously on scarcity, among other things, if God was finished and cool and perfect to begin with and just needed to sort of unfold itself? Poof, here I am. Like, God starting out as a drunkard is the only way that makes it make sense, kind of. The qualifiers of rational, systematic, and comprehensive are critical. There were certainly many minds that came to a form of this awakening, but for the most, it was not understood through reason. It relied primarily on intuition, mysticism, and religious thinking. We can see this happening historically in Hinduism, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah. In fact, Hegel points out clearly in his book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, where he describes the development of consciousness of existence as first gaining an awareness of itself through religious symbolism, what Hegel calls picture thinking. What's the German for that? I did know the German for that. It escapes me at the moment. Quick, Ren, what's the German word for picture thinking? I know it's one word with like 16 letters. Not Weltanschauung. Anyway. Angela says I can't spell. Can't spell. Okay, never mind. Picture thinking, but only fully comes to its own self-understanding through reason. This rational understanding began to show itself in traditions like Neoplatonism and thinkers like Spinoza and Schelling. While Hegel's philosophy was rooted in the rationalist traditions of the Enlightenment and idealism, kind of a landmark in German idealism, it is almost certainly the case that there were hermetic and esoteric influences in his thought. Excusez-moi. The emphasis on the evolution of consciousness, the dynamic interplay between opposites, and the notion of the absolute coming to know itself bear resemblances to hermetic and esoteric principles. The philosopher Glenn McGee, in his book Hegel and the Hermetic Tradition, writes, Hegel was actively interested in Hermeticism. He was influenced by its exponents from boyhood on, and he allied himself with Hermetic movements and thinkers throughout his life. Hegel viewed reality as a system of living reason. According to Hegel, reality is not fundamentally physical. It is a rational thought structure, a living mind. In his book, The Science of Logic, he describes this structure of reason, starting with nothing at all except being and nothing. Not any specific kind of existence, not anything material, just propertyless being. Hegel states that being and nothing are the same, yet also different. This dialectical clash of being and nothing begins a chain of logical unfoldment that results in the mental, rational structure of existence. You probably really are hearing bugs on my end, Nelson, because I've got a sensitive studio mic that is botted way up right now, and the house is surrounded by crickets and frogs. Sometimes I even see them on the windows. Sometimes a lizard comes along, and the cat stares with longing at the soft underside of a lizard or a tree frog there at the window, revealing itself through the glass. It's so tantalizing. Welcome to Georgia in August. This rational mental structure is a mind that occasionally breaks out in bugginess, and then unconsciously others or externalizes itself as the physical world in total, right? All of nature is the othering of the divine. Everything material, everything, is a kind of illusion that is phenomenal representation of the rational mental thought structures. A dream world is generated by the unconscious mind. According to Hegel, everything around us is an externalization or physical representation of the rational thought structure of existence. If it breaks out in bugs, it must also break out in lizards. It's an interesting place. Everything is a product of this mind, and this includes human beings. Thus, this mind unconsciously inserts itself into its own self-generated dreams. into its own self-generated dream world through humans. And in doing so, it begins to explore and learn about itself through human consciousness. According to Hegel, the consciousness of humanity enters a process of dialectical evolution, resulting in increasingly higher levels of consciousness. First through religion, then through reason, humanity begins to collectively realize that it is all reality, a mind experiencing itself through itself. When consciousness collectively comes to this realization and understands the subject and object are one, that objective reality is generated by subjective mind, the mind of existence realizes what it is. It awakens. This awakening via our collective consciousness's attainment of what Hegel calls absolute knowledge is what he calls absolute spirit. It's our collective knowledge that we are all reality, the mind of existence experiencing ourselves through ourselves. This is an extremely brief description compared to the body of Hegel's work. Even so, you can see how close Hegel came to understanding the big picture of existence, although he wasn't perfect and his philosophy contains errors. But for Hegel, reality wasn't necessarily composed of a multiplicity of eternal minds united as a network, but rather a single mind expressing itself through human consciousness. Though Hegel was correct that existence is living reason, he lacked a way to rigorously study this structure, though he certainly created a monumental system to attempt this in his Science of Logic. It's important to note that although Hegel was a brilliant philosopher, as with any other philosopher and their philosophy, we agree with some things and disagree with others. Regardless, he's mentioned here as an important figure in the development of consciousness. Richard Maurice Buck and cosmic consciousness. Now from the top of 164, if you're following Cosmogenesis in paperback. Another consequential development that helped set the stage for hyperawareness can be found in the discoveries of the late 19th century psychiatrist Richard Maurice Buck. In 1901, his discoveries were published in his book Cosmic Consciousness, a study in the evolution of the human mind. This book explored the concept of a higher form of consciousness that Buck called cosmic consciousness. Buck described cosmic consciousness as a form of awareness that transcends ordinary human experience. He posited that this consciousness is a distinct and higher level of awareness. According to Buck, cosmic consciousness is an awareness of the life and order of the universe, differing significantly from the simple consciousness of animals, which he viewed as sentience rather than consciousness, and the self-consciousness typical in humans, which is somewhere between. Buck writes, cosmic consciousness is a third form, which is as far above self-consciousness as is that above simple consciousness. And cosmic consciousness is a higher form of consciousness than that possessed by the ordinary man. The prime characteristic of cosmic consciousness is, as the name implies, a consciousness of the cosmos, that is, of the life and order of the universe. Buck posited that consciousness evolves in stages or degrees. After the simple consciousness of animals and the self-consciousness of humans, he proposed that cosmic consciousness was the next stage in humanity's evolutionary development. This form of consciousness was, according to him, more than the conscious self-awareness that most humans possess. Instead, it represented a form of higher insight and understanding of the cosmos, transcending individual ego and personal concerns. Buck believed that this cosmic consciousness allowed individuals to comprehend the interconnectedness of all things and the underlying unity of the universe. He saw this level of consciousness as rare and an exceptional state achieved by a few individuals throughout history, which included notable figures in religion, art, and philosophy. Buck believed that as humanity progresses, more individuals could potentially attain this elevated state of awareness, so that we're creating Buddhas instead of Buddhisms and Christs instead of Christianities. Little aside there. He explained that those who attained, have I dialed myself way down? Can you guys hear me all right? Still good? Still good on the audio? Buck believed that as humanity progresses, more individuals could potentially attain this elevated state of awareness beyond the labels and the joining of things, right? He explained that those who attained this consciousness would understand their eternal nature. With these come what may be called a sense of immortality, a consciousness of eternal life, not a conviction that he shall have this, but that consciousness, the consciousness that he has already, consciousness that he has it already, right? Right, eternity is now. And it waits for no one. Right, Mr. Cat? Murphy agrees. The soul's immortality is now. On page 165, the revolution of aerial navigation. Bucks described these revolutions that he believed would radically transform human society and existence. The revolution of aerial navigation. Buck believed that aerial travel, the ability to navigate the skies, would diminish the importance of national boundaries. Oh, wow, that was optimistic. What about the Air Force? And possibly even language differences. In other words, the ease of travel and transportation would essentially make the world a smaller place. In some regards, that came true, creating greater global connectivity and potentially leading to a more unified global society. 2, the social economic revolution. Buck predicted the coming of a significant economic and social revolution that would aim to eradicate the extremes of wealth and poverty and move towards a more equitable and communal society. The psychical revolution. This is the central theme of his book, where he discusses the evolution of human consciousness into cosmic consciousness. Buck views this as a higher state of mind that transcends the limitations of individual self-awareness, allowing humans to perceive and understand the interconnectedness of all life and the cosmos. He believed this revolution in consciousness will be the most transformative of all, elevating humanity to dramatically new levels of understanding, empathy, and awareness. Buck argues that these 3 revolutions, especially when operating together, will create a new era for humanity. He writes, the 3 pages that are now sticking together, where's my teleprompter? Buck writes, the 3 operating as they will together will literally create a new heaven and a new earth. New earth, where have I heard that? Old things will be done away, and all will become new. He saw a future where old societal structures and limitations are transcended, giving way to a more harmonious, interconnected, and spiritually awakened human race. Imagine it. Buck not only described this higher state, but also attempted to rationalize and explain it in a manner that was accessible to the academic and intellectual community of his time. Never an easy thing to do. This approach was notable because it represented an attempt to bridge the gap between spiritual experiences and rational empirical psychology. Buck's work on cosmic consciousness was influential in both psychological and spiritual circles. It laid the groundwork for future exploration into higher states of consciousness and was a precursor to many of the 20th century ideas about the evolution of human consciousness and spirituality. What Buck called cosmic consciousness is the result of the development of Neogenian concept of the analog all. Buck's cosmic consciousness is higher than the consciousness of self-awareness of the average human mind that has only developed an analog I, but cosmic consciousness is not quite hyper-awareness. Cosmic consciousness is the kind of consciousness that results from the intuitive development of the analog all. In other words, cosmic consciousness is what we refer to as all awareness. So it's a movement in the right direction. It's important to note some critical aspects and limitations in Buck's work. His description of cosmic consciousness aligns with the intuitive understanding of a universal interconnectedness, but he does not explicitly address its rational development. In the Neogenian system, the analog all is a concept representing a holistic, interconnected model of reality, internalized within the psyche. While Buck's work hints at this concept, it does not clarify if he comprehends it as an internal model of the self or others. This lack of emphasis on rational understanding and identification with all reality, absolute identification, is a notable absence. Buck posits that cosmic consciousness is typically achieved through a dramatic and transformative personal experience, often described as a sudden intense vision accompanied by profound realizations. What does that sound like, Terence McKenna? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Sounds like psychedelics. While such experiences can indeed facilitate the intuitive development of the analog all, Buck's emphasis on them as the primary or sole pathway to higher consciousness is restrictive. The Neogenian system acknowledges that there are various methods to aid in the experiential aspect of the analog all's development, including psychedelic experiences, dream work, active imagination, and teleological meditation with a purpose, without necessarily undergoing dramatic visionary experiences. Buck's concept of cosmic consciousness is the intuitive form of consciousness or all awareness that is currently being explored and developed in New Age groups, eclectic spirituality, and occultism. However, this form of consciousness, while higher than ordinary human consciousness, does not equate to hyper-awareness, which requires rational development of the analog all, in addition to intuitive and experiential development. Despite these limitations, Buck's work is important for several reasons. Firstly, it represents one of the earliest academic approaches to acknowledging and studying this higher form of consciousness. As a psychiatrist, Buck brought a scientific and rational perspective to the subject, often shrouded in its mysticism and vague symbolism. Secondly, his belief that the evolution of human consciousness towards a higher state would lead to the creation of a new world aligns with the Neogenian goal of creating a new humanity and a new earth through the collective attainment of hyper-awareness. While Buck's work was groundbreaking and important in the field of psychology and the study of consciousness, it falls short of the comprehensive understanding of hyperawareness. His focus on cosmic consciousness as a primarily intuitive experience achieved through dramatic personal experience contrasts with the Neogenian emphasis on the balanced development of both intuitive and rational aspects of consciousness. You may wonder, what about Hegel? Wasn't he an academic who wrote about this very subject a little earlier? Most definitely, and in a monumentally more rigorous, precise, and detailed way. Additionally, Hegel's conception of the pinnacle of consciousness and his own, it was well beyond Burke's cosmic consciousness. However, Hegel is notorious for having one of the most difficult philosophies to read and understand, and virtually no one does it. Virtually no one knew what he was talking about during his lifetime. The point is that the publication of a book on this subject from a psychiatrist displays evidence that a rare few of the rationally inclined public were discovering this form of consciousness, rather than being regarded as obscure speculation from an out-of-date philosophy or mystical spirituality. A respected psychiatrist claimed to have achieved it and said that others could too, and he attempted to explain it in a rational manner. A higher form of consciousness was developing, and it was beginning to be taken seriously. Sri Aurobindo, an influential 20th century spiritual thinker and philosopher, contributed significantly to the discourse on higher states of consciousness. His work, much like Richard Maurice Buck's exploration of cosmic consciousness, delves into the evolution and potential of human consciousness, but with a unique approach. Sri Aurobindo and supramental consciousness. Sri Aurobindo's philosophy centers around the concept of integral yoga and the evolution of human consciousness to a state he terms supramind or supramental consciousness. This state is a transcendent and transformative level of awareness, going beyond the limitations of the human mind and ordinary consciousness. For Aurobindo, the evolution of consciousness is a gradual and natural process leading humanity towards divine realization and a higher existence. Aurobindo's idea of the supramind involves a direct experience and realization of a higher truth and reality, which transcends both the intellectual and intuitive mind. As it would, right? It's a state of being where individual consciousness merges with a universal or cosmic consciousness, leading to a transformation of the nature of one's being and perception of reality. According to Sri Aurobindo, this evolution is an ongoing process, and the supermind represents the next stage in the evolutionary journey. This stage of consciousness is not only aware of its unity with all existence, but also able to act from that understanding and transform the world. It's a state where the spiritual and material aspects of existence are harmonized, leading to a life that is both divinely inspired and materially effective. His approach to achieving this higher state of consciousness involves a dedicated practice of integral yoga. This practice aims to transform the entire being, not just the mind or intellect, and includes the physical, vital, emotional, and mental aspects of the individual. Integral yoga seeks to bring about a spiritual transformation that permeates all aspects of life, leading to a state of harmony, knowledge, and unity with the divine essence of reality. Sri Aurobindo believed that the emergence of a new kind of human being would lead to the creation of a new earth. How could it not, right? Here are some of the most important aspects of his philosophy relevant to cosmogenesis. Transformation of human consciousness. Aurobindo believed that humanity is in the midst of an evolutionary crisis. I'd say we could probably find some evidence for that if we looked around. Where the next step is the emergence of a higher level of consciousness. This higher consciousness, which he called the supermind, would enable individuals to transcend the limitations of ordinary consciousness. The supramental race. According to Aurobindo, the advent of this new consciousness would lead to the development of a new type of human, the supramental being. These beings would have a greater unity of consciousness, free from the ignorance and division that plagues the current human condition. They would possess a deeper insight into the nature of reality and be able to live in harmony with it. transformation of Earth and society. Aurobindo envisioned that the rise of the supramental consciousness would not only transform individuals, but also society and the Earth. He believed that this transformation would lead to a new era of peace, harmony, and self-enlightenment. The existing social, political, and economic systems, which are often based on division and conflict, would be replaced by structures that reflect the unity and interconnectedness of all life. Integral yoga as the path. To achieve this transformation, Aurobindo advocated the practice of integral yoga. This form of yoga aims at the transformation of the entire being and focuses on bringing the divine into all aspects of life. It's a holistic method that integrates spiritual realization with everyday existence. Sri Aurobindo's philosophy provides a comprehensive and spiritual framework for understanding the evolution of human consciousness. His vision of the supermind as a state of higher awareness and unity with cosmic consciousness aligns with the ideals of the Neogenian system in certain aspects, particularly in the pursuit of a higher, more integrated state of being. This brings us up to Ken Folds, a more modern Western thinker reflecting on Hegelian thought, and higher consciousness. Ken Folds, a late 20th century, early 21st century philosopher and thinker, contributes another perspective to the discussion of the evolution of consciousness. Folds, known for his study and interpretation of Hegelian philosophy, discusses reason, consciousness, and societal transformation. Folds' Hegelian interpretation. Folds aligns closely with Hegel's philosophy, particularly the concept of absolute spirit and the dialectical process. He emphasizes that Hegel's philosophy transcends traditional religious and atheistic views in understanding the divine as manifesting through human consciousness and the world. And yeah, we're going to run a little bit late since it took us a while to gain traction past those technical issues on the front end, so I hope most of you can stay with us. Contribution to the understanding of higher consciousness. This is from the top of 171. Is that where we're at? Yeah, 171 in paper, Cosmogenesis. Ken Folds brings a unique approach to the concept of higher consciousness. While he shares Hegel's view of a rational evolving spirit, he also integrates personal experiences and insights. His work attempts to build upon Hegel's foundation, exploring the implications of this advanced consciousness for modern society. What is most noteworthy is that he, like Hegel, emphasizes the need for reason to develop this new form of consciousness. Vision for transforming the world. Folds believes that the evolution of consciousness will lead to major societal changes, and he proposes steps for transforming the world based on higher consciousness. While his work is not explicitly hyper-awareness as defined in the Neogenian system, Folds' work is relevant for its exploration of higher consciousness in terms of reason and its potential impact on humanity. This emphasis on reason aligns with certain aspects required for hyper-awareness. Dawn of the Neogenian system. The establishment of the Neogenian system marks the dawn of hyper-awareness on Earth. Our system, emerging from a synthesis of various philosophical, scientific, esoteric, and metaphysical ideas, is a monumental advancement in understanding consciousness and the evolution of reality. Unlike systems that emphasize either rationality or intuition, the Neogenian system stresses the importance of developing all aspects of consciousness. This harmony of intuition, reason, and experience creates an understanding of reality that transcends all previous frameworks and forms of consciousness. The unique elements of the Neogenian system, such as the analog all and the notion of network minds, provide a new way of understanding the interconnectedness of all things and the evolution of consciousness. The advent of the Neogenian system is a transformative point in the evolution of collective consciousness. It provides humanity with the tools to achieve hyper-awareness. This is a phase where the collective mind, or absolute, attains a level of awareness so monumental that it begins to explicitly teach itself. This development is a crucial juncture in the evolution of consciousness and its role in shaping reality. Right now, through cosmogenesis, you are actively participating in this new phase of existence as you realize that you are the absolute studying itself through these pages. At this stage, the collective mind engages in explicit self-reflective learning and teaching, which is what you are doing right now through studying the system. The insights and knowledge accumulated over time are not just passively received, but actively integrated and actualized. The Neogenian system is a vehicle for transmitting our advanced understanding of reality to a wider audience in an accessible way through various media like books, lectures, videos, art, and online platforms. Neogenians disseminate knowledge, allowing more individuals to access and contribute to our collective transformation and the creation of the new earth. The establishment of the Neogenian system accelerates the development of consciousness on a collective scale. It provides tools and frameworks that help individuals cultivate higher forms of awareness, such as hyper-awareness, more efficiently and effectively. By explicitly teaching itself, the collective mind acts as a catalyst for transformative change. Individuals who engage with the system are likely to experience dramatic shifts in their understanding of self, others, and the universe, leading to changes in their values, behaviors, and ways of being. This collective awakening is a foundational step towards creating the new Earth, a planetary civilization worthy of that designation that operates on principles of interconnectedness, reason, empathy, and higher consciousness to increase the quality of life for all, not some select little group of elites. Neogenians recognize their role as co-creators of reality, leading to the development of a world made in our image, existence itself. In this new phase of collective awareness, every individual plays a crucial role. Each person's journey towards higher consciousness contributes to the collective evolution, making personal growth integral to the collective awakening. The release of Neogenian books. The release of these books detailing the Neogenian system is the creation of catalysts that can be shared, discussed, and explored like we're doing right here, right now. They allow for the widespread dissemination of the Neogenian system to the world. We proclaim our message to all by breaking down complex concepts into understandable language. These books allow readers from all walks of life to revolutionize their consciousness. The publication of these books is a dynamic catalyst, sparking the ignition of hyper-awareness across the collective consciousness. Are you feeling it? It is a monumental point in human history. They are designed to not only inform, but to transform, guiding readers through the process of reaching higher forms of consciousness and ultimately hyper-awareness. The Neogenian system is a fiery beacon, illuminating the path towards the collective realization of our interconnected nature and higher forms of existence. Through these pages, we propagate a new vision for humanity, one grounded in unity, empathy, reason, and higher wisdom. Each person contributes. Each person's growth contributes to the collective ascent of humanity as a whole. By engaging with the concepts of the Neogenian system, readers are not only elevating their consciousness, but are also becoming agents of change in the collective transformation of human evolution. We are a catalyst for a new phase of existence, the new beginning. Thus concludes Section 7 of Cosmogenesis by Morg. I'm going to try to catch up on chats a little bit. Hopefully the live stream is still living. I have a red light on there that says it's live. Maybe some of you are still catching this on YouTube. Maybe some people for the first time are catching a Nexus Academy session that normally happens only in the Discord server, the Citadel. But now for a limited time, there it is. If you just jump onto my Neogenian Whisper channel, this is what we do every week. Good idea, Nelson. I am kind of at the bottom there. Probably sounding a little dry, coming back from sickness and all. Y'all talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. Nelson says, I am the absolute all, you are, we all are. That's right. That's right. Nobody here is getting darned to a long-lasting heck by an almighty gosh. We're waking up and dusting off that trash. Is there music playing? Not here, brother. Fridge compressor is humming behind me somewhere. Cat sleeping on a stool. You might be hearing his dreams. Murphy dreams pretty loud. If it's like Five Finger Death Punch or something like that, it might be the cat's music. Echo Dot is quiet. Heretical response says, where would suicide take someone after the death? Oh, I said that. Unaliving, self-unaliving, right? We don't want to be penalized on YouTube because censorship is so real, but where would it take someone after the death current? Just wondering. Well, I believe that, and this is speculative, like we don't have explicitly defined rational answers to everything just yet, but speculating about this, I think for most people, death is a reset, and drifting through the death current to a new place for most is an unconscious process. I don't think that it's radically shaped by the manner of exit from the previous life. Not that I'm encouraging in any way self-unaliving. It's an unnecessarily hard reset. even if what you get next isn't so bad. It's an unnecessarily hard reset. I don't recommend it to anyone. I also don't believe that there's a special hell or a purgatory waiting to punish someone for uniquely bad decisions. That's a very foggy, old-fashioned, superstitious idea that does little more than cause pain to the families who survive someone who exits that way. Let's not do that. Sure, and then there's, gradations, like you mentioned. Smoking is just a self, it's a delayed form, right? We're all dying. It's just a question of when. So let's honor life without embracing scary, fatalistic ideas. Certainly, if someone is approaching the level of awareness where they are likely to have conscious influence on their next life, it probably isn't something they would choose to do, with some notable exceptions, right? The Zen master, who was also a samurai, might do that by following the code of Bushido after perceived dishonor, which is grisly, but why should it lead to something bad, right? In a modern context, shouldn't a person with stage 4 cancer or Parkinson's who is in their 70s have the option of going quietly to sleep in a Swedish custom-designed gas chamber instead of, leaving like poor Robin Williams left? There should be better options for people. A humane society does not stigmatize death to such a degree that euthanasia is unthinkable. What a bunch of scaredy cats we are. We late Victorians are so neurotic that we may be hung up on sex and death forever. Like either is such a big deal. Neogenians are awakening from the slumber of neo-Victorian existence. We're going past the place that Freud understood. Ryan says, never underestimate the human fear of the great unknown and its sense of self-preservation. Yeah. Fair enough. And in most contexts, most of the time, your instinct to self-preserve is a very good thing. And the priority shift that Bridget's talking about in the chat is perfectly fine too. The Neogenian system does not dictate priorities of that kind. We only hope that more and more people are reaching a place where, say, the role of sexuality in your life, for instance, is a conscious choice, right? Instead of just an instinctual playback loop inhibited by neuroses. It should be, like everything, a conscious act. Sue says, I think I read that being single is becoming a lot more common than it used to be. Could be. Could be. And declining birth rates are a thing. In some places, it's even a problem. In the crowded city of Tokyo, it's very normal for people who achieve a university education to, on average, a couple has one child and one child only when they're about 26, 27 years old. And that's it. If that pattern held, that would be, after a generation, a population gently cutting itself in half, which is probably pretty smart when you think about it, right? Does the Earth really need to sustain 8.5 billion people and growing? I'm a one and done parent. Not that there's anything wrong with having more than one, but in some ways that trend could really be a good trend. Thinking ecology, resources, thinking about one child inheriting whatever I managed to pull together during the rest of my life, instead of parceling it out. But she's such a joy. I might have started sooner had I known. Rough making peace, being single, and coming out of grief at the same time. Yeah. That's a rough double task there. Nobody should really have to go through. Oh yes, where did that cute little thing go? I can relate. I can relate. Heretical. Not that I have, 3 kids or something, but we still love the versions of ours who are younger, who pop up once in a while. The Google Photos feeds it to the Kindle Fire Stick, and there she is on television at 3, going, yeah, kind of missed that version too. And Ren just wants grandchildren. Well, tell your kid to get busy. I mean, when they find the right partner, of course. Oh my God. Don't get me started. I hope I live long enough to experience a grandchild. That'd be great. I was 45 when I became a dad, so that has its advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, Nelson dreads the thought of his son having kids, seeing he's only 9. He shouldn't start next week or even next month, right? Maybe a paper route or a lawn mowing side hustle. Babies need a lot of formula. You guys, anybody still watching on the tube? Or has this become Discord only? I see Nelson on there saying, sounds like ska with a lot of guitar. Was that coming from my end? Could be audio hallucinations. Oh, we're still live. Thanks, Elise. Yeah. Oh, I have auditory hallucinations when I'm vastly sleep deprived. Anybody else? when for whatever reason I've been awake for like 30 hours straight or more, which is rare, but it's happened. I tend to hear distant strains of music that aren't exactly there, or distant radio stations that are from the 1930s, or all sorts of things. I get auditory haunts. I get haunted. Fan probably isn't helping, yeah. White noise can do that. White noise gives you a projection screen for anything. Brooke says he's going to listen to the presentation on YouTube later tonight. I hope that turns out to be a good thing in replay. I haven't really used the YouTube channel for live streaming before. No expert there, as will be in evidence. I doubt I will be attempting to edit it, so it's going to live in whatever form it lives for those who stumble upon. And maybe join us in Morg's Discord for future Nexus Academy sessions if they like what they see and hear. Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Maybe the algorithm will kick it right up there. A Hail Mary, you know. It will oddly go viral for God knows what reason. Mostly people just going, what the fuck? Who is this guy? What's he talking about? He sounds crazy. You can always do with more followers like that. That's the right place to start, man. That's just the beginning of a good conversation. Are my lines even showing up in here? I see you, Laura. Did I miss some good one-liners? I still haven't figured out if I'm lucid dreaming sometimes or hallucinating or what. That's the thing, right? If you read a book or two on lucid dreaming, you're supposed to give yourself certain tests. You repeat something ritualistically through the day, like staring at the palm of your hand and asking yourself, am I dreaming? What's my reality check for this? Can I stick my index finger through the palm of the other hand? If that works with incredible ease, probably I'm dreaming. If it sends me to the ER, maybe I'm not. Right? If you rehearse something like that, you will dream it eventually. And then you'll go, ta-da! This is a dream. What do I want to do next? I think I'll walk through that wall or float through the ceiling. I know someone who goes lucid traipsing, like half lucid zombie traipsing through partially constructed houses and other people's places. And there's always another awakened dreamer somewhere who goes, what the fuck are you doing here? Get out of my place. Well, the same way you got in. And then they slide her out, you know, between a dresser and the wall or underneath a curtain or something, and she's somewhere else. I'm guessing no one immediately relates to that, but nice, nice. Love the Hegel. In the Discord chat, there's Hegel winking at us, courtesy of heretical response. And he can wink. He really is. Winking. Winking at his fancy lady, I imagine. Going up Pump Street, buying her some pastries. The children don't know. The children mustn't know. They're still jealous. Still miss their mom. But sure enough, he's winking at church in front of God and everybody at some widow. Creepy old bastard. Good night, Elise. Glad you could be here for this extravaganza. And it's almost 9 o'clock here on the East. We're running about 30 minutes over time since we had a shaky start. Hope this session's been as good for you as it has for me, or maybe even a little better. I am shortly going to end the live stream and silence myself in the Discord room. Let you all talk amongst yourselves if you want to hang a bit longer. And as always, for members of the Citadel, you can pop into the course discussion section anytime through the week and continue the conversations we've had in Nexus Academy. We'll look forward to seeing you next week and for Morg's major live stream tomorrow night, right? I think he's going live. I think they're going live despite the holiday. Whether you are there tomorrow night or not, I hope you're having a grand Labor Day weekend. And Nelson, couldn't we all? Couldn't we all? Good night.